ready to talk
Yeah.
sexy supply chains? Yes, everyone's ready for that? Great. Bill, I know you are.
All the time, all day,
Okay.
every day.
Dave, we're going to start with you, though.
No pressure.
No pressure at all. So C.H. Robinson, 120-year-old business. Do I have that right?
That's right.
I'm curious, or just at a high level over the last few years, how has the company changed as a result of this intelligence boom?
Well, first of all, great to be here, especially with these folks up here at Best in the Business. I'm going to tell you this, Jason. What's changed in the last few years for Robinson, number one, company's got its swagger back. And two, it's winning again.
That's not just thanks to you?
I'm staying out of that.
Okay,
right?
okay, all right.
But what I would say is we do. The company has really gotten its swagger back, really driving to win. But it's also realized that it doesn't have to be disrupted. It can be the disruptor. And with this technology and our lean AI operating model, we're actually doing that. We are disrupting an industry. We actually look at Robinson to be somewhat like a technology company that's serving logistics. And that's what we're going to continue to do. And we're super excited about that technology that's actually moving supply chains and disrupting supply chains. Happy to talk about it, but the last few years, it's really changing that, driving real value, and it's exciting.
I'm curious from all of you and Bill, your clients. I don't know that the word tariffs have come up here yet, but I'm curious how technology has played a role over the last couple of years dealing with sort of the tariff shock that happened last year. And I don't know if you have thoughts from your humanoid business, Peggy, but open to anyone on that.
Yeah, I mean, just a little bit. We manufacture in the U.S., so we have some advantage already in Salem, Oregon.
Has everyone seen the agility robot around?
The robot is downstairs. Digit, please go down and introduce yourself. But we
Shake hand or no handshaking?
You can shake hands. I don't think they have it powered up.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll
I
talk a
wouldn't
little
shake.
more about safety and
Okay.
robots, but but you know, basically, sorry, your question was
I was asking about
components.
tariffs.
Yeah. So the thing that we were worried about was LiDAR, which is part of the sensor system that goes on autonomous vehicles, also robots, and rare earth metals. So those two things, rare earth metals are in the actuators, which are the motors that drive every limb. And so far, things have been okay. We're still low volume, so we haven't felt a real effect. Though I can imagine you probably have, Bill, in your company.
Well, yeah, and I think the tariff, there's another T word, the trust, in saying there's
I thought you were going another T word.
Well, I'm going to pull it in, that the security and privacy have always been front and center, and how do we make them less about compliance after the fact and embed them into our investment strategy and how we engineer and how we deliver value. The compliance, regulatory compliance piece of it, we're seeing the same. So the boom in AI is we can actually codify those policies, embed them in approach, and then have it be something less of a surprise or something after the fact that helps say no in innovation and actually have that front and center. And then you've got ethics and morality and what it means to your brand as you invest in technology for your people, for the market. And I think all those things are actually converging in a way that you can codify a response that you couldn't before. So it's exciting, and it needs to be a part of the conversation from the get.
Peggy, I just want to come back to you for a second. So your robots are now in a production line at a Toyota plant, is that correct?
Yeah, Toyota, Schaeffler, GXO. We work with Amazon, so we have been deployed for 3 years now, and
there's a lot of I think if you're inside the robotics world, there's I think still a debate on form factors and whether humanoids are actually necessary for, I don't know, the vast majority of manufacturing or production lines versus other form factors. I know there's a guy who ran robotics at Amazon for many years, and he's he's of the opinion they're not. What is the reason that humanoids are actually necessary versus something that maybe doesn't look like us or move like us?
So humanoids are meant to go in human places. The whole world is built things are waist high in our kitchen. We have stairs that are built so wide that, humans go up and down stairs. And so that's where humanoids go and operate in. And when you're lifting something from the ground and up to as high as humans can lift, um, you can get very tippy with a wheeled base. I know Brad Porter, he likes wheeled bases. But there's just use cases for wheeled bases and there's use cases for bipedal humanoids. And it comes down to operating in areas that humans operate because the higher up you lift, the wider that base has to get so it doesn't tip over and then you can't go down those aisles. So you really can think of it as, stepping in for a human in these roles versus, you know, moving in a wider open space.
And we're going to get to the task replacement versus job replacement in a little bit. But first, just on the humanoid topic, I'm curious if who would want one in their home? Right here? Okay. What? Bill. Dave too? Peggy, you're not raising your hand.
I know. I was just like, this little guy over here has his hand up.
Oh, that's our. Is that?
Asher.
That's it.
Yeah.
What's up, Asher?
Yeah.
You want one? Do your chores? Okay.
Okay, deal.
I like that.
My wife's quote at CES, the laundry folding robot, she doesn't encourage my gadgeteering much. Her literal quote was, "Gimme that," on the text, which I thought was pretty amazing.
Dave, I want to turn to you for a second. You talked about the business, 120-year-old getting its swagger back.
Yeah.
You came from Amazon at some point in your career. You had to stop between that. I'm curious what you learned about sort of technology organizations and artificial intelligence implementation that maybe can work inside an organization
Yeah.
like yours and maybe approaches that can't.
No, absolutely. Well, I'll tell you what's working, and I don't hesitate. I'm unapologetic about this on the thinking of applying scale and speed into an organization. I mean, coming out of Amazon, that's what we did there every day, was about speed and scale. But applying that with my industrial background, companies like Harley Davidson and Caterpillar and Ford, bringing those industrials with that technology at scale, bringing it into Robinson, a 120-year logistics company, it's really kind of changed the game. It's kind of disrupted the industry a bit. And why? One, because it's an industry that kind of runs at its own self-pace that everyone expects it to run at. I akin it to.
What does that mean exactly?
It means this. Imagine like a third grade soccer game and everyone follows
I don't want
the
to.
ball.
Yeah.
And so
I coach soccer, so I definitely don't
exactly.
want to.
And so it's like, no, you have to break that away. And so that industry is usually used to being a output-based industry. And you put pricing in and you check it, a quarter later, did it work or did it not? Or you just put in, grand general price increases and then you go and check. You have to change that. So we're an input-based company now. It's about solving problems really fast at scale and changing the clock speed. And that's not what we did before.
Can you give me a tangible example of something that has changed, or whether it's a process or a job function that has changed since you've come in, thanks to whether it's LLMs or some agentic process?
So starting with our operating model, we go from it's binary. It's like green or red. And it brings visibility and accountability to what's happening. It allows the tech to flourish. And that accountability, if you're not on, we embrace that red and we discover how we can get you back to green. But then using the technology, that we were able to discover a number of things. I often quote an orchestrating agent that's mature now is our quoting agent. And I would tell everyone, for this to be successful, you have to drive this technology inside of a workflow.
And it's coordinating what exactly?
Exactly. It's coordinating quoting. So we do transactional quoting. In our business, that's super important. Comes in 24 hours a day. And yesterday, our humans, who are fantastic, could only get to 60% of those quotes. And when they did, it would take them 17, 20 minutes, respond back to the customer. Well, you're leaving a lot of freight on the table or opportunities. Now we have an agent that is mature, 24/7, 100% response to all quotes, 24/7 in 32, now 31 seconds. and it does it in a conversational manner. And that drives revenue growth, customer service, speed. All of that happens, and it's happening right now. And under that, it has feeder agents. And our people are able to move from the left to the right and really solve problems for customers versus just doing those mundane.
So the person who's doing that or was doing that,
yeah,
they are still employed, definitely?
they are employed. Now, in some cases, we have entry-level roles, operating roles, 11 to 14% turnover rate. Now, I will tell you, we've shifted our work. We've fundamentally re-engineered the company. Those roles we will not have humans doing. We will have humans doing contact with customers, solving customers' problems, and going up the value stack to really get their minds to work in doing that. Agents are doing a lot of that upfront work, and that contributed to the 45% productivity we've seen since 2022, and you can see it in our bottom line and our P&L.
Bill, curious with the companies you talk to often and the leaders you talk to. I know when we chatted a bit beforehand, and I think, Dave, I asked you if you had a KPI on headcount you want to cut, because it seems like Wall Street loves that. And Bill, I'm curious what the conversations are you're having with leaders of companies in this space and others.
There's still a lot of headlines, and I've yet to meet a company that can shrink its way to growth. And I think the companies doing it right have CEOs like what the story just Dave described of, we're going to go after business process and tangible outcome, and then work backwards from first principles on how can we do that differently with technology. And it's AI, it's agentic, it's physical AI, and this exciting moment in time where bits and bytes with atoms and matter all coming together to be able to unlock it. But that's when the conversation is like, hey, let's talk about the agentic harness, that's the starting point. I know we've got a long way to go, because the CTO will say the tech isn't the hero of the story. And the reason you see so many headlines about the unrealized value and ROI of AI is because it's trying to do incremental on low-hanging with low-ceiling potential versus how do we fundamentally break down, reimagine. I'm sure the quoting process you just described isn't following the same steps and tasks that the people were doing before.
Exactly.
We need to get a price that's fair and we can actually stand behind and get it as quickly as we can with validity. And so...
I'm going to open it up in a bit for questions from the group. Oh, we have one on me. Yeah, let's do it. Just wait for a mic up here in the front. I'll get to you second. Just tell us who you are, please.
Yeah, Rick Chavey with Viax. So Dave, hey Bill, looking at your business as you think of growth and expanding in certain verticals like life sciences, pharma, that kind of thing, are you also building agentic capabilities around that to extend that connection to the customer, upstream, downstream, from the product to the end customer?
Yeah, we are. Great question. So,
can you give some background on that? What he's asking?
Yeah, so he's talking about the agentic technology, and are we building that as we continue to look at our verticals? And we're focusing on verticals like healthcare and energy and retail and manufacturing. If you look at our story coming from machine learning, which a lot of folks will start with that, we went from machine learning to generative AI because people are throwing these terms around, simultaneously. And now we're moving to agentic. And agentic is best suited for, call it data that's not on system. Generative AI works really better for data that's on system, which we happen to have a builder legacy culture in Robinson, which is playing really well for us. And so we are now building agentic agents that will go out with a context layer and start to drive thinking of our logisticians around the world to get data that is off system. That's a game changer in the world of logistics. We're actually building that now, and I expect to see that. Super excited. It's going to hit our global forwarding business and then come back to our brokerage, truck brokerage business.
Do you have the talent internally to do this building, or are you leaning on forward deployed engineers from like one of the LLMs or your friend to your right? I mean,
well, listen, there are a ton of awesome companies out here, including my friend right here, right? But we happen to have a lineage of build. It comes from my background in Amazon, but it also comes from Robinson's heritage of building. And we continue to build. So we build our own tech, we drive our own tech, And the most underestimated thing here is when you do that, the advantage you have is velocity of experimentation.
Yeah.
So we get to experiment on things that we break all the time, and there's not an integrator in between. And for our competition, we've modeled this. They would really have to connect with about 15 to 20 different companies to kind of replicate the things that the team is building at Robinson. I feel really good about that.
David, I love that you have that. And we just did a recent study that showed most organizations don't. And the two things that are most lacking are infrastructure and
Most
talent
organizations
readiness. Don't have that capability, that engineering and builder foundation to be able to own that rapid experimentation.
Right.
I'd say they're trying to build it in quick form. But the two biggest things that were lacking were infrastructure and talent on how prepared are you to take advantage of all the AI movement right now. The other piece we saw is the trust gap between the frontline employees and corporate is growing.
That's right.
And that's an issue because the front line knows where actual knuckleheadery lives. If we talk about reimagining process, those are the folks you have to get bought into. How do we think about the world differently? Not the way we've always done it, but how it could be now.
Yeah. Well said.
I'll come back to this in a second. I think we had one right here. Yeah, this woman up here in the black.
Yeah, this is for Dave. I'm Carlin Taylor, CEO of Serva, and we owned Allied and North American Van Lines.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm curious what you think about autonomous trucks, and what do you think about all the drivers all around the country who drive trucks? When do you think that's going to change for your industry and mine?
Yeah, so two different parts of that question is one, my opinion on what it's going to do for us, and then two, the technology itself. If I'm hearing that right.
I think also what about all the people driving these trucks today?
Absolutely.
Yep.
So the technology itself, this is just in my opinion, I've seen this. I mean, they're testing that technology out west, as you know, right? And they're driving that in Arizona and Nevada and some other places. I think at scale, that's still, probably in the second horizon, 7 years out, that's at scale, with the challenge being the metros and how do you get that autonomous to the metros. For us, I say this, our technology will continue to build. We put freight from point A to point B, from shippers to a mechanism to do that. If it's autonomous, it doesn't matter for Robinson. I am going to move that freight from a customer or a shipper, and I will book it on an autonomous vehicle, and I'll plug that in with the technology to do that. So it doesn't matter to us. The drivers that are doing that, if it goes at scale and when it's driving, that's obviously an impact to drivers when you do that. But I think there's a lot of, kind of headwinds and things you have to get before you do that, and some upskilling that'll probably have to happen in that particular industry. That's my opinion on that.
I'm going to come back to the audience in a second. Peggy, I want to turn to you. So you are, jobs are obviously a big discussion point, as they should be. When companies are coming to you looking for humanoids, I'm curious what that conversation is like. I know you talk a lot about replacing tasks, not roles or people, but I'd have to imagine there's a lot of companies out there that, financially want to replace the human labor. And so can you give us a sort of a view into those discussions you're having?
Yeah, that's a great question, Jason, because we get that a lot. We're a robot, you must be taking jobs. I'll tell you right now, we are stepping in and taking tasks off people's hands. And the kind of thing I'm talking about is, if you go into these warehouses, they're beautiful sets of automation. A lot of times they're not connected to each other. So there's a human that is taking something off of a cart that's rolled up and putting it on a conveyor belt and doing that over and
Or
over.
like at Amazon calls it water spider. Right?
Water spidering, right? Yeah. They do
Which
that
is-
for a while, then they do something else very manual for a while. And these sorts of things, people say, well, why not? Why don't they just connect? Well, the automation has come in at different times and they have long depreciation cycles. So for the next probably decade, there's going to be machinery that needs something to connect them. Those jobs are not much loved. If that's part of someone's job, they say that's a part I don't like doing because I have to go do that for a period of time. It's repetitive, it's mind-numbing, it's injury-prone, and there's over 1 million jobs like that in the U.S. today unfilled. They're unfilled. nobody wants these jobs because they're very tough, very manual. We have a retiring workforce.
Yeah.
We have an
But
administration.
the companies aren't coming to
reshoring.
you saying, we'd
No.
also like to cut our staff by 20%.
I haven't had one company say that, not one. It's all about, can you fill this labor gap that I have? Because our production is now starting to slow because I can't find people to connect these two pieces of machinery. Robots are great for that. They can do things over and over again. We can take 3 shifts.
What's your biggest obstacle right now? Is it
Ah,
the money to build out a scaled force of these robots? Is it something else?
no, it's safety. And actually, this is something we learned from Amazon. They have such a high safety bar, and we knew if we could meet Amazon's safety
It's not what a
bar.
lot of people outside of Amazon would think, right? I
Well,
mean, from some of the
From,
narratives.
from our view of the industry, that bar is very, very high. And when we first started to engage, by the way, all humanoids have to operate inside our work cell today. So it has a little gate around it. They do their job in there. But what Amazon said is we want it to come outside the work cell so that you can go down and pick something up at the loading dock and do the water spidering, do something here and something over there. Robots are big, heavy pieces of machinery. And if you think about those big pieces of machinery in facilities like you have, you stay back from them. There's usually a red line on the floor. You're not supposed to cross it. Now imagine that thing gets up and starts walking around. That's a robot. Our robot's 200 pounds. So
No, super scary and dangerous. It can be.
I wouldn't call it scary, but you.
I mean,
you
pretty
do.
scary.
Sorry. Go
There
talk
it
to Digit. Have a conversation
Okay.
with Digit. But so we knew we had to solve safety, and we worked on it. By the end of this year, we're going to have the world's first cooperatively safe humanoid who can walk safely amongst humans. And it'll take the right type of action. If a human's coming toward the robot and it gets too close, the robot will bring itself down to the ground. It won't completely cut off power because you still need it to be in control.
So what month should we expect?
End of this year.
End
we'll
of this
have
year,
the
okay.
world's first cooperatively safe robot.
We have time for one very quick. I'm sorry, lady in the green. It's a beautiful green. I like it. Just make it quick, please. Sorry.
Hi, Kathy Pham, the head of AI at Revive. But for this one, also the daughter and niece of truck drivers. And there's several of us here who have family members in that business. For all of you, simply, as you think about replacement or augmenting, however, your devices are deployed in the field, what about the other parts of a job? So you mentioned task, which is really interesting. What about the other parts of a job that a truck driver might do, for example, that is not just get thing from A to B? There are other things that maybe they look at with logistics or other things that they just take on because they're the human in the car going across the country. Or like a robot in your home doing something, but like a human would have also noticed like a broken light bulb and changed it. And you're like, that's
So the roles you're asking, where are the roles where humans are still needed, or what happens if the human isn't there to do those other things?
Yeah, what happens when we replace and then there are these other things that the person just took on that you never really knew they did? And how do you plan for that?
Quickly, please. Thanks.
Very quick. I think to the comment you had before about what's keeping us back, and to that point, work redesign, and the fact we did a recent study that of every dollar spent on AI, agentic, physical, the full category, 93% is on the tech and 7% is on everything else, which is the culture, it's the learning, it's the training, it's how communicating the purpose and helping people understand how they can evolve their career along the ways you're describing. And I think that ratio has to change dramatically if we're going to shift the narrative on the headline. In culture, change, communication, learning, all of those are the missing link right now. And hopefully we're turning the corner on it.
And I think technology for us, order to cash process, in doing that, you start thinking about appointments, and these are all things that are mundane tasks that people are doing that today. That technology makes it easier, it makes the experience different for that truck driver that's doing that. I think you'll see a continued shift in that technology that helps augment that experience for a truck driver. And the complex, the physical, will always have a human in a loop. And I think you'll see that it'll just get better and have a better experience.
All right, we're gonna have to wrap there. Thank you so much to everyone.